One of the reflections that I had as I went through the book was how the times that we live in are very different. You know, we do what we think is right at a given point in time, but what is also true is that social expectations have changed. So from a corporate perspective, the whole Milton Friedman shareholder wealth creation, I mean, there was the time for that. But if you look at it from a company perspective, I think increasingly corporates are starting to understand that, okay, if I really want to attract the talent that I have into the organization, if I want to attract the customers into the organization, and by the way, it's actually accelerated during the last 2 years of the pandemic, then I actually need to think differently about the lens through which I create value. So I think times have changed, and it's not any judgment around decisions that have been made in the past around a particular social context and so forth, but that I think really presents a challenge to organizations today to really think about, okay, well, what is your role in creating value for the community at large? And if you go far back enough, actually many organizations at their heart were really about how they blend into the overall ecosystem. So in some ways, we're sort of coming full circle. It's not about trying to compare against another organization, but for each organization, and I work with a number of different companies. I serve on different boards, some large, some small. It's what makes sense for that particular organization at their particular journey, given what they're doing. And so that's, I think, where I'd leave it, which is every organization has to sort of chart their own path to figure out, the right solution for them, but with an overall focus around how do we sort of celebrate our shared existence on this planet. Well, I guess in the past year or so, clearly the one that's really gotten the spotlight is just focusing on ESG, right, and what that actually means and how you translate that into your own context. So I would say that that's really been high on the agenda. I think the other thing that, in my sort of dream of how sort of, this evolves is to encourage a lot more interdisciplinary interaction between the two worlds. I think it's actually in that crossing that you actually get a lot of value creation and understanding and appreciation of the broader picture. Otherwise, we're only seeing a little bit of the picture. So one of the things that I think we'll be continuing to do is to foster that kind of engagement. In some ways, maybe it's becoming a false dichotomy. Because when you look at the corporate sector, not just here but around the world, you have companies that are basically saying, okay, we actually need to do good. And so that's why you have your B Corps, you have your B team, you have, a lot of organizations are now signing up to this. And of course, if you're cynical about it, you can say, well, they're signing up because it's good for their branding and so forth. But I do think that some of them are truly committed to ensuring that what they do has a much more holistic impact, stakeholder capitalism, as Anne mentioned. So in that case, then it is a false dichotomy between what's a social enterprise and what's a corporate, because eventually social enterprises need to be self-sustaining funding to be able to have more impact, and then corporations also need to build in the other side, and so those lines become extremely blurred. See that there are companies that are shifting in that direction, and I also see the new companies that are being formed today. Again, you can't say that that's across the board, but many of them have much more of a social consciousness and awareness, particularly those that are being started by younger people, and this comes, I think, to the point that Alfie is raising about some of the folks over that he sees coming through at Raise. So I do think that there is momentum in that direction. Now, how long that change takes, I have no idea how long that piece of string is. But again, there are actually role models around this, whether you look at the Tatas of the world, right, that actually have at their heart a foundation, but they're commercially extremely successful, but they link back into that ethos. And you can go back to actually many family firms that have that kind of ethos. So maybe we need to just shine a bigger spotlight on them, because they are absolutely doing well commercially, financially, but also linking into this longer term horizon. So I do feel that we are moving in that direction. I think I share your sentiment around that, but I don't know how long it will take us to get there. And I think there will always be outliers, just like, there are always people selling guns and running drugs. I mean, there's always been that, right? So, but if you take out the outliers and you sort of look at what our expectations of what business should be. And I'm very hopeful when I look at the younger generations coming into the workforce today and their expectations of what companies should be about, which in turn is putting pressures onto companies as well in terms of their behaviors. Totally take Eun's point that some of it is, okay, maybe it's just the sparkly stuff, but people see through that eventually. right? And capital flows out, and talent flows out as well. So eventually it all comes back, right? Again, just matter of a time horizon. But at the end of the day, back to your point, N's point around governance, as a board, one of the things that's really important, you have to sort of say, how do we ensure that we're truly solving the problem? And truly solving the problem means cutting off the demand, actually. How do you actually get to a point where you no longer need dialysis centers because people are healthy and they're living healthier lives? So that's a decision that has been taken several years ago, as you point out, to really have that kind of a shift beyond just providing the services to going way, way, way upstream to children. Right? Because healthy behaviors and healthy habits start from very young. So I think that's a similar shift that actually all organizations need to go through as you're thinking about how do you relearn and reframe what problem you're trying to solve for. And that can be a difficult thing, whether you think about a company that's been in business for 50 years, 100 years, board directors who have, 30 years of experience. We have certain paradigms, but how do you actually relearn a lot of this stuff, whether it's getting up to speed on ESG and the nitty-gritty around that, just that alone, there's a lot in there. So and then once you have that in place, then you can actually redefine your problem. What's the problem statement? And then work backwards from there.